Most people do not ruin their careers with one dramatic mistake. They ruin them quietly. Not by getting fired, not by making one terrible decision, not by saying the wrong thing in one meeting. They ruin them by staying too long in the wrong role, by confusing loyalty with strategy, by working incredibly hard on things no one important notices, by becoming valuable in ways that only matter inside one company, and by assuming that if they just keep doing good work, someone will eventually reward them for it. That is the part nobody warns you about. Because the hardest career lessons are not obvious when you are living through them. They do not feel like mistakes at the time. They feel reasonable. They feel responsible. They feel safe. They feel patient. They feel like the mature thing to do. And then 5 years pass. And one day you look around and realize someone less talented is making more money than you. Someone with less experience has more influence than you. Someone who took more risks now has more freedom than you. And you are left wondering how you worked this hard and still ended up behind. That is what this video is about. These are 6 career lessons I learned the hard way, lessons that can quietly cost you years of income, confidence, opportunity, and momentum if you do not understand them early enough. And the goal of this video is simple: to help you think more strategically about your career before time teaches you these lessons at full price. So as you listen, I want you to think about your own situation. Where are you playing it too safe? Where are you waiting for recognition instead of creating leverage? And where are you investing effort into a career path that may not love you back? If one of these lessons hits you personally, comment, "I needed this," below. I read the comments, and I'd love to know which lesson feels the most real for you right now. Let's start with the one that quietly changes careers more than almost anything else. Number 1. Small decisions quietly shape your entire career. Most people think career turning points are obvious. They imagine a turning point as a promotion, a resignation, a new job offer, a major layoff, a bold decision to move cities or switch industries. But in reality, the decisions that shape your career most are usually the quiet ones. The offer you almost applied for but didn't. The manager you tolerated for one more year. The project you said no to because it looked uncomfortable. The role you stayed in because it felt secure. The opportunity you delayed because the timing did not feel perfect. These decisions rarely feel dramatic in the moment. They feel small, temporary, harmless. That is exactly why they are dangerous. Because careers are not only shaped by what you actively choose, they are also shaped by what you postpone, avoid, tolerate, and quietly accept. One extra year in the wrong role does not sound serious, but that 1 year can become 3. Those 3 years can cost you a major salary jump. They can delay your exposure to better leaders. They can keep you in an environment that stops challenging you. They can quietly train you to accept less than you are capable of. And by the time you realize the cost, the damage is not always dramatic, but it is cumulative. You have less momentum, less confidence, less market value, less recent proof that you can operate at a higher level. This is one of the most painful truths about career growth. You usually do not pay for bad career decisions immediately. You pay for them later with interest. You pay in lost years. You pay in lost income. You pay in lost optionality. You pay in the version of yourself you never became because you kept choosing what was comfortable over what was necessary. And often, the trap is not laziness. It is emotional logic. You stay because your team is nice. You stay because your boss depends on you. You stay because the job is familiar. You stay because you are afraid the next move might be worse. You stay because leaving feels disloyal. You stay because you tell yourself, "Let me just wait a little longer." That sentence has trapped more careers than people realize. Let me just wait until bonus season. Let me just wait until my manager leaves. Let me just wait until the market improves. Let me just wait until I feel more confident. Let me just wait until I have 1 more year of experience. Sometimes patience is smart, but sometimes patience is just fear wearing a professional outfit. And if you are not careful, waiting becomes your career strategy. That is where people get stuck for years. They are not making a bold mistake. They are simply not making a decision at all. And indecision has consequences too. The market does not pause while you think. Other people are building new skills, making new connections, getting promoted, switching companies, learning how to operate in more valuable environments, taking imperfect opportunities and growing into them. Meanwhile, the person who keeps waiting slowly becomes less competitive, not because they are incapable, but because they are standing still in a world that rewards motion. That is why one of the most important habits you can build in your career is the habit of evaluating your situation honestly instead of emotionally. Ask yourself questions that are uncomfortable but clarifying. If I stay in this role for another 12 months, what specifically will improve? What am I actually learning here that increases my value in the market? Am I being challenged or am I just being used? Am I staying because this role is truly good for me or because it is familiar? If a friend described my exact situation to me, would I tell them to stay? That last question is powerful because it removes your emotional bias. We often know exactly what someone else should do, but when it is our own career, we rationalize things we would never advise another person to accept. We tell ourselves that maybe next quarter will be different. Maybe this manager will finally notice. Maybe this company will eventually reward me. Maybe if I just work a little harder, everything will click. Maybe, but maybe not. And your career is too important to run on vague hope. At some point, you need evidence. Evidence that the role is growing you. Evidence that the environment is stretching you. Evidence that your effort is translating into leverage, skill, visibility, and future opportunity. If that evidence is not there, you need to stop asking, "Can I survive here a little longer?" and start asking, "What is this costing me?" Because that is the real question. Not whether your current job is unbearable. Not whether your boss is evil, not whether the company is completely broken. The better question is, what is the cost of staying exactly where I am? What opportunities am I not seeing because I have gotten too used to this place? What confidence am I losing by proving to myself every day that I will tolerate misalignment? What future salary, network, skills, and momentum am I sacrificing by staying comfortable right now? Those are career-defining questions, and once you start asking them, you stop viewing career moves as emotional reactions and start viewing them as strategic decisions. You begin to understand that your career trajectory is not built only by big, brave leaps. It is built by the small moments where you either choose growth or choose comfort, where you either act on reality or hide inside familiarity, where you either protect your future or slowly trade it away for short-term emotional safety. That is lesson number one. Never underestimate the power of a quiet decision, because in your career, the biggest turning points often do not announce themselves. They show up disguised as another year in the same seat, another delayed application, another not yet. Another compromise you promise is temporary. And years later, you realize those quiet decisions were not small at all. They were the path. So here's a question for you. Have you ever stayed too long in a job, role, or company because it felt safer than making a move? Comment stayed too long. If that's been you, I think a lot of people watching this will relate. Number two, loyalty is often a very expensive career strategy. There is a version of loyalty that is admirable. Showing up, doing what you said you would do, supporting your team, taking ownership, not running away the moment work becomes difficult. That kind of loyalty matters. It builds trust. It builds reputation. It builds character. But there is another version of loyalty that quietly destroys careers. It is the kind of loyalty that keeps you underpaid for years. The kind that makes you wait for opportunities that never come. The kind that convinces you to keep giving more to an organization that has already shown you it will not meaningfully invest back in you. And this is where a lot of smart, hardworking people get trapped, because they are not being lazy. They are not being careless. They are trying to be good professionals. They believe that if they stay patient, stay dependable, and keep proving themselves, someone will eventually notice. Someone will reward the consistency. Someone will create room for them. Someone will say, "You've earned it." But that is not how most career systems actually work. In many companies, promotion timing has less to do with your loyalty and more to do with budgets, politics, headcount, reorgs, leadership priorities, and whether someone above you leaves at the right moment. That means you can do everything right and still wait far longer than you should. You can be the reliable one, the one who always steps up, the one who saves projects, the one who trains new people, The one who never complains and still be told, just be patient, your time will come. Sometimes it does, but a lot of the time, that sentence is just a polite way of keeping you productive while giving you nothing concrete. And that is what makes blind loyalty so expensive. It delays the moment you start thinking strategically. Instead of asking, what is the best move for my growth, income, and long-term leverage? You start asking, how much longer should I wait before they finally reward me? That is a dangerous shift because the moment your career strategy becomes waiting for someone else to choose you, you lose power. You stop managing your career like an asset. You start managing it like a hostage negotiation. You tell yourself stories like this: my boss likes me, so I should stay. The promotion will probably happen next cycle. I do not want to look disloyal by leaving too soon. I have already invested so much time here. I do not want to throw away everything I built. But here is the hard truth. Time invested is not the same thing as future value. Just because you spent 3 years building credibility somewhere does not mean the fourth year is the right investment. Just because you survived a difficult season with a company does not mean the company now owes you the return you want. Just because your manager appreciates you does not mean the organization will suddenly redesign itself around your ambitions. This is why some of the biggest salary jumps and title jumps happen when people leave. Not because leaving is always better, not because loyalty is meaningless, but because the external market often values you more objectively than the company that has grown used to you. Inside one company, people can get attached to an old version of you. They still see you as the junior person who joined 3 years ago, the dependable executor, the safe pair of hands, the one who always says yes. Even if you have outgrown that version of yourself, the system may still be rewarding you like that person. But when you enter the external market, you are often evaluated differently. You are judged by the problems you can solve now, the outcomes you can create now, the skills you bring now, the leadership capacity you have now, and that fresh evaluation can completely change your leverage. This is why job changes can accelerate careers so quickly. A new company does not care that you were almost promoted. They care whether you can deliver value in the role they need filled. A new company does not care that your current employer keeps saying, maybe next year. They care whether you are worth paying more today. That shift matters, because if you stay too long in a place that keeps promising without delivering, you do not just lose money. You lose negotiating confidence. You lose exposure to better environments. You lose the chance to test your real market value. And worst of all, you can start normalizing under-recognition. You start telling yourself that being overlooked is just part of being professional, that being underpaid is temporary, that caring more than your share is just what strong people do, that if you keep proving your loyalty, the reward will eventually come. Sometimes it does. But sometimes the reward for being endlessly reliable is simply more responsibility without more authority, more work without more visibility, and more pressure without more compensation. That is not loyalty paying off. That is loyalty being exploited. Now, this does not mean you should leave every job the moment things get frustrating. It does not mean you should chase every shiny offer. It does not mean you should become impulsive or transactional. It means you need to separate emotional loyalty from strategic reality. A company is not your family. A manager's appreciation is not a promotion plan. A good performance review is not the same thing as career progression. And we see leadership potential in you is not the same thing as an actual timeline with actual numbers and actual next steps. If you want to stay somewhere, stay because the opportunity still makes sense. Stay because you are learning. Stay because your compensation is fair. Stay because your role is expanding in ways that build your future. Stay because the people above you are actively creating opportunities for your growth. Stay because the environment is still increasing your market value. But do not stay just because you feel guilty leaving. Do not stay because you think patience alone is a strategy. Do not stay because you are emotionally attached to the version of yourself that suffered there. Do not stay because you are hoping your sacrifice will eventually be recognized by people who have given you no real evidence of that. A useful way to think about this is to ask yourself 3 questions. First, if I were applying to this company from the outside today, knowing what I now know, would I still choose this role at this salary? Second, if my promotion never happened here, what would my plan be? And third, if another company offered me better pay, better scope, and better long-term upside, what exactly would I be staying loyal to? Those questions cut through a lot of self-deception because many people are not staying out of strategy. They are staying out of habit, fear, identity, or guilt. And that is how years disappear. You keep hoping the organization will finally validate what you already know you are worth. You keep telling yourself that leaving would erase all the effort you invested. You keep waiting for the right moment to test the market. And meanwhile, someone else, with less hesitation, makes the move, gets the raise, gets the title, gets the exposure, and resets their trajectory while you are still being thanked for your patience. The goal is not to become disloyal. The goal is to become clear. Clear about what your work is worth. Clear about whether your current environment can realistically deliver what you want. Clear about whether your loyalty is being rewarded or merely absorbed. Clear about whether staying is building your future or delaying it. Because loyalty is only a strength when it is paired with leverage, visibility, and growth. Without those things, loyalty can become one of the most expensive stories you ever tell yourself. And in your career, expensive stories are dangerous. They cost years. They cost confidence. They cost income. They cost options. So respect your team, do great work, honor your commitments, but never confuse being a good employee with having a good career strategy. Those are not always the same thing. And I want to ask you this. Do you think loyalty still pays off in today's job market? Or is switching companies often the smarter move? Drop your honest take in the comments. I'm curious where you stand on that. Number 3, hard work alone does not get you promoted. This lesson is painful because it attacks one of the deepest beliefs hardworking people grow up with. If I work hard enough, someone will notice. If I stay late enough, someone will reward it. If I carry more than everyone else, someone will eventually recognize my value. If I become the person who always delivers, promotion will naturally follow. It sounds fair. It sounds logical. It sounds like the way the professional world should work. But in many careers, that is not how advancement actually happens. Hard work matters. Reliability matters. Discipline matters. Execution matters. But effort alone is not what gets rewarded at higher levels. Impact gets rewarded. Visibility gets rewarded. Relevance gets rewarded. Trust from decision makers gets rewarded. Solving problems that matter to leadership gets rewarded. And if you do not understand that distinction early, you can spend years being the hardest worker in the room while someone else gets the promotion. Not because they are better than you, not because your work is worthless, but because they understood a truth you did not. In most organizations, being valuable is not enough. You also have to be visible in the right way, on the right problems, to the right people. That is where a lot of good people get blindsided. They assume performance speaks for itself. They believe quality naturally rises to the top. They think if they just keep doing excellent work, the system will sort it out. Sometimes it does, but often the system rewards what leadership can clearly see, clearly connect to business priorities, and clearly trust at the next level. And that means not all hard work has equal career value. You can spend 6 months carrying a project that no senior leader cares about and get almost no career return. Meanwhile, someone else can lead a smaller initiative tied to revenue, efficiency, hiring, customer retention, or a visible executive priority, and suddenly they are seen as high potential. That does not always feel fair, but fairness is not the point. The point is understanding how careers actually move. The workplace is not school. In school, the person who studies hardest often gets the best grade. In a career, the person who works hardest is not automatically the one who gets the biggest opportunity, because promotions are not awarded for effort. They are awarded for confidence. Confidence that you can operate at the next level. Confidence that you can influence outcomes that matter. Confidence that you can solve problems with bigger stakes, more ambiguity, and more visibility. Confidence that putting you in a larger role will create more value than risk. That confidence is not built by being busy. It is built by making your work legible to people who make decisions. This is where a lot of hardworking professionals accidentally sabotage themselves. They become the person who says yes to everything. They rescue deadlines. They fix everyone's mistakes. They become the dependable workhorse of the team. And because they are so useful in that role, the company keeps them there. That is the trap. If your value is based entirely on being the person who handles the grind, you can become too useful to move. You become the person everyone relies on to keep the current machine running. But the people getting promoted are often the ones seen as capable of improving the machine, influencing the machine, or leading the machine. Those are not the same thing. One person is known for effort, the other is known for leverage, and leverage changes careers. So if hard work is not enough, what actually matters? First, you need to understand what your leadership team truly cares about, not what they say in broad motivational language, not what sounds good in company meetings, what they actually care about. Do they care about revenue growth, cost reduction, execution speed, retention, risk management, product quality, cross-functional influence, strategic visibility, team stability, innovation? Every company has a small number of things that truly matter in practice. If your work does not connect to those things, your effort can remain invisible no matter how exhausting it is. That means one of the smartest career questions you can ask is this: what problems are expensive enough, visible enough, and important enough that solving them would change how leadership sees me? That is a very different question from, what task can I do well this week? The first question is strategic. The second question is operational. You need both, but only one of them tends to change your trajectory. This does not mean you ignore your job description or stop doing solid work. It means you stop confusing activity with advancement. You stop measuring your value only by how hard you work. You start measuring it by whether your work changed something that mattered. Did it save time? Did it save money? Did it reduce chaos? Did it increase output? Did it improve a process others depend on? Did it create clarity where there was confusion? Did it solve a recurring problem leadership was tired of dealing with? Did it help the business hit a goal that executives actually care about? That is the language of impact. And the higher you go, the more important that language becomes. Because senior leaders are not promoting people based on who looks exhausted. They are promoting people based on who looks useful at a higher altitude. Can this person see beyond their own task list? Can they prioritize? Can they simplify complexity? Can they influence other people? Can they identify what matters without being told? Can they create results without constant supervision? Can they think like an owner instead of an employee waiting for instructions? That is what promotion conversations are often about. Not who worked the latest, not who answered the most emails, not who suffered the most. This is why some people feel so bitter after being passed over. They think, but I did more than anyone. And they may be right. They may have worked harder than the person who got promoted. They may have sacrificed more evenings, handled more emergencies, carried more workload, fixed more messes. But if all of that effort was concentrated in low visibility, low leverage work, the organization may still not see them as the best choice for the next level. Again, that does not make the system morally perfect, but pretending the system works differently will not help you. You have to learn how to play the game without becoming fake. And that starts with reframing your role. Do not think of your job only as a list of tasks to complete. Think of it as a platform to demonstrate judgment, leverage, and business value. That changes how you work. Instead of simply saying yes to every request, you become more selective. You ask better questions. You look for projects that create visibility and teach you higher-level skills. You volunteer for work that puts you closer to strategic problems, not just operational labor. You learn how to communicate outcomes, not just effort. You make sure the people above you understand not only what you did, but why it mattered. That last part is critical. A lot of people do valuable work and then hide it behind humility. They assume that mentioning results is bragging. They assume their manager will connect the dots for them. They assume senior leaders somehow know everything happening below them. Usually, they do not. People are busy. Attention is limited. Memory is short. And unless you deliberately communicate your contributions, a lot of your best work will disappear into the background. That is not self-promotion in the shallow sense. That is career literacy. It is knowing that your work has to be translated into business language if you want it to influence decisions. So, instead of saying, I worked really hard on this project, say, this change reduced turnaround time by 30% and removed a major bottleneck for the team. Instead of saying, I helped with a lot this quarter, say, I led 3 process improvements that reduced errors, improved handoff speed, and freed up time for higher priority work. Do you hear the difference? One sounds like effort, the other sounds like value. One says, I was busy. The other says, I made the business better. And businesses promote the second person faster. Another hard truth is this. If your manager only sees you as a strong executor, they may genuinely like you and still not fight for your promotion. Why? Because liking your work is not the same as seeing you at the next level. That is why you cannot wait until promotion season to start behaving like someone ready for more. You need to build that case long before the decision is made. You do that by consistently showing signs of next-level thinking. You solve broader problems. You improve systems. You communicate clearly. You take ownership without being asked. You make other people better. You reduce noise instead of creating it. You bring solutions, not just updates. You understand the business context around your work. That is what creates upward confidence. And once you understand that, your relationship with hard work changes. You still work hard, but you stop spending all your best energy proving that you can endure. You start spending more of it proving that you can think, prioritize, influence, and create outcomes that matter. That is a completely different game because in the early stage of a career, hard work helps you survive. But in the middle and upper stages of a career, hard work without strategy can actually keep you stuck. You become known as the person who can handle anything, but not necessarily the person who should lead anything. And if you want to grow, you need to close that gap. You need to move from being impressive through effort to being undeniable through impact. That is the shift. Not less discipline, not less reliability, not less excellence, just more awareness of how value is perceived, how promotions are decided, and how to align your work with the problems that actually move your career forward. Because if you spend your whole career trying to prove how hard you work, you may win admiration. But if you learn how to prove the impact of your work, give yourself a much better chance of winning influence, income, and opportunity. So let me ask you, do you think workplaces reward real impact? Or do they still promote visibility and politics more than they should? Drop your view in the comments, because I know people have strong opinions on this one. Number 4, no one will protect your career better than you. One of the biggest career mistakes smart people make is assuming that if they do excellent work, the right people will naturally notice, advocate for them, and make sure they are taken care of. It sounds reasonable. If your manager values you, surely they will fight for you. If your work is strong, surely the company will see it. If you keep your head down and perform, surely someone in leadership will eventually connect the dots. But this is one of the most expensive assumptions you can make in your career, because the people who decide your future are often not seeing your work as clearly as you think they are. Your direct manager may appreciate you. Your team may depend on you. Your peers may know you are excellent. And still, none of that guarantees that the people with real power over promotions, raises, role changes, high visibility projects, and long-term opportunities are thinking about you at all. That is the hard part. A lot of career decisions are made in rooms you are not in, by people who do not fully understand the depth of your work, by leaders who are juggling dozens of names, competing priorities, limited budgets, and incomplete information, by executives who are not asking, who deserves this the most, but rather, who do we trust? Who is visible? Who is already being talked about? Who feels safe to bet on? If you are not part of those conversations, your talent can remain invisible much longer than it should. That is why doing good work is only part of career protection. The other part is making sure the right people know what you are capable of and how your work connects to things that matter. This is where many hardworking professionals hesitate. They hear words like visibility, networking, or self-advocacy and immediately feel uncomfortable. It sounds political. It sounds fake. It sounds like bragging. It sounds like the kind of thing shallow people do, while real professionals just focus on the work. But that mindset can cost you years, because self-advocacy is not arrogance. It is not manipulation. It is not pretending to be more important than you are. It is simply refusing to let your career depend on other people noticing things they may never have the context, attention, or incentive to notice. That is a completely different thing. If you do not explain your value, someone else's story about your value will fill the silence. And that story may be incomplete, outdated, or just wrong. Maybe they see you as dependable but not strategic. Maybe they think you are strong technically, but not leadership material. Maybe they know you work hard, but do not realize how much influence you actually have across teams. Maybe they still see you through the lens of who you were 2 years ago. If you are not actively shaping that perception, you are surrendering one of the most important parts of your career. So what does it actually mean to protect your own career? It starts with understanding that your manager is not your career agent. A good manager can absolutely help. They can create opportunities. They can coach you. They can speak well of you. They can open doors. But they also have their own incentives, their own blind spots, their own pressure, their own limitations, and in some cases, their own reasons for keeping you exactly where you are because you make their life easier there. That does not mean they are malicious. It means you cannot outsource your ambition to them. You cannot assume they are thinking about your future with the same urgency that you should be. No one will. That is why you need to start treating your career like something that requires active management, not passive hope. That means asking better questions. Not just, am I doing a good job? But, how is my work being perceived by the people who make decisions? What gaps exist between how I see my value and how leadership sees it? Who actually has influence over the opportunities I want? What evidence do those people need in order to trust me at the next level? Who speaks for me when I am not in the room? That last question is one of the most important questions in any career. Who speaks for you when you are not there? Because when promotions, stretch assignments, compensation discussions, and leadership opportunities are being discussed, your future often depends on whether someone credible is willing to say your name with confidence. Not casually, not politely, not as an afterthought, but with conviction. This person is ready. I trust them. They handled a difficult situation well. They think beyond their level. They should be considered for this. We should not lose them. That kind of advocacy changes careers, and it usually does not happen by accident. This is where the idea of sponsors becomes so important. A sponsor is not just someone who likes you, not just someone who gives you advice, not just someone who says nice things in private. A sponsor is someone with influence who is willing to use some of that influence on your behalf. They mention your name in the right rooms. They connect you to the right opportunities. They frame your work in a positive way when decisions are being made. They help other leaders see your upside. That is very different from simply having a supportive boss. And if you want a stronger career, you need to think seriously about whether you have sponsors or whether you are just hoping your manager will handle everything. Now, you do not get sponsors by begging for favor. You get them by doing strong work, yes, but also by making it easy for influential people to understand your value. That means building relationships beyond your immediate team. It means volunteering for projects that expose you to leaders outside your direct reporting line. It means communicating your work clearly. It means being someone people trust in moments that matter. It means showing judgment, not just effort. It means following through so consistently that when your name comes up, people feel safe attaching their reputation to you. That is what sponsorship is built on: trust, visibility, and repeated proof. Another part of protecting your career is documenting your value instead of assuming you will remember it later. Most people are terrible at this. They do good work, solve difficult problems, improve processes, calm chaos, mentor people, and create results, and then they move on without recording any of it. Months later, when performance reviews or promotion conversations happen, they remember the stress but not the evidence. That is a huge mistake. You should know your own case better than anyone else. What did you improve? What did you save? What did you fix? What did you lead? What changed because of your contribution? What metrics moved? What bottlenecks disappeared? What cross-functional problems did you help solve? What did you do that made leadership's life easier? If you cannot answer those questions clearly, you are making it harder for other people to advocate for you and harder for yourself to negotiate. A quiet but powerful career habit is keeping a running record of wins, outcomes, responsibilities, and impact. Not because you are obsessed with yourself, but because memory is weak, organizations are busy, and careers are influenced by whoever can tell the clearest story. And if you do not tell your own story well, someone else's vaguer version of it may become the official one. You also need to be honest about whether the environment you are in is actually capable of supporting your growth. This is another place people get passive. They assume that because they like their team or respect their manager, the company must therefore be a good, long-term place for them. Those are not the same thing. A nice environment can still be a dead-end environment. A supportive boss can still work inside a system with no room for advancement. A company can value you and still not have the budget, structure, leadership quality, or strategic direction to grow your career the way you want. You need to know the difference. If you are ambitious, protecting your career sometimes means accepting that good people in a limited environment still cannot give you what you need. And once you see that clearly, your job is not to wait indefinitely. Your job is to make a move while your confidence, momentum, and market value are still strong, because that is another form of self-advocacy, not staying so long in a constrained environment that it starts shrinking your options. Protecting your career also means protecting your reputation, not just your image, your actual reputation. Are you known as someone who can be trusted with difficult work? Do you communicate clearly under pressure? Do you make people's lives easier or harder? Do you create clarity or confusion? Do you follow through? Do you take ownership? Do you handle conflict like an adult? Do people trust your judgment when stakes rise? That reputation matters more than people think, because when decision makers do not have perfect information, they lean on pattern recognition and trust. They ask themselves, how risky would it feel to put this person in a bigger role? Would other people want to work with them? Do they elevate the room or drain it? Would I feel comfortable defending this person's promotion? Those judgments are not made only from your output. They are made from your pattern. And that is why protecting your career is not only about visibility, it is also about credibility. You want to be visible for the right reasons and credible in the moments that count. When you combine those two things, strong proof of value and strong trust from the right people, your career becomes much harder to ignore. But if you rely entirely on merit speaking for itself, you are taking a huge risk, because merit does not speak, people do. And if the right people are not telling the right story about your work when it matters most, you can be quietly passed over while less capable but better positioned people move ahead. That is frustrating. But it is also useful to understand, because once you stop romanticizing how careers should work, you can start operating effectively inside how they actually work. You can stop waiting to be discovered. You can stop assuming your manager is handling it. You can stop thinking visibility is shallow. You can stop confusing silence with professionalism. And you can start doing what strong professionals eventually learn to do: build results, build relationships, build credibility, and make sure your value is understood by the people who can actually change your trajectory. That is not ego. That is responsibility. Because at the end of the day, your company may appreciate you. Your boss may like you. Your peers may respect you. But no one is going to care about the long-term health of your career more than you should. No one is going to think about your income, your growth, your leverage, your next chapter, and your future optionality with the same urgency that you must. And the moment you truly understand that, you stop waiting for protection. You start building it. So here's the question I want to leave you with on this one. Do you believe great work speaks for itself? Or do you think self-advocacy is absolutely necessary if you want to grow? Let me know in the comments. I'd really like to hear your take. Number 5. Specialized skills can quietly trap you. At first, becoming highly specialized feels like the smartest move you can make. You become the expert, the go-to person, the one everyone relies on when something complicated breaks, the person with rare knowledge, deep context, and technical credibility. And in the short term, that can feel incredibly powerful. It makes you useful. It makes you respected. It gives you job security, or at least the illusion of job security. It makes people say things like, "We'd be lost without you." And when you hear that enough, it is easy to believe you are building a stronger career. But there is a hidden danger inside that kind of value. You can become essential in a way that only matters inside one company, one team, one system, or one very specific tool set. And when that happens, what feels like security can quietly become dependence. This is one of the hardest career lessons to learn, because the trap often looks like success. You are busy. People need you. You know more than everyone else about a critical process. You are the person who understands the internal software no one else fully understands. You are the one who can navigate the weird reporting structure, the legacy system, the undocumented workflow, the company-specific platform, or the highly customized process that only makes sense inside that organization. Inside the building, that makes you look indispensable. Outside the building, it may not mean much at all. That is the danger. A skill can be extremely valuable in one environment and surprisingly weak in the broader market. And if too much of your professional identity is tied to that narrow environment, you can wake up one day and realize that your confidence, income, and leverage were built on a foundation that does not travel well. Maybe the company restructures. Maybe the tool gets replaced. Maybe leadership changes direction. Maybe your team gets outsourced. Maybe the process you mastered gets automated. Maybe you decide you want to leave and suddenly discover that the thing you are best at is not something many other employers care about. That is a brutal moment because now you are not just searching for a new role. You are trying to translate your value into a language the market understands and realizing you have not practiced that translation in years. This is why career resilience depends so much on transferable value. Not just being good at your current job, not just being indispensable in your current environment, but building capabilities that still matter if your title changes, your company changes, your industry shifts, or your current system disappears. That is what protects you. Think about it this way. There is a big difference between being important to your company and being valuable in the market. Your company may love that you know their internal systems. The market may not care. Your company may depend on your deep knowledge of a niche process they created themselves. The market may not reward that nearly as much as you expect. Your company may think of you as a hero because you can solve a specific internal problem faster than anyone else. But if that problem barely exists anywhere else, then your leverage outside that environment may be much lower than you think. That does not mean specialization is bad. Specialization can absolutely create opportunity, authority, and income. The question is, specialized in what? Are you specialized in something the market broadly values? Or are you specialized in something that only your current employer values? Those are two very different things. One creates bargaining power. The other can create captivity. That is why you have to be intentional about the kind of expertise you build. For example, learning how to lead projects across teams, communicate clearly with stakeholders, solve operational bottlenecks, manage conflict, improve systems, analyze data, make decisions under uncertainty, sell ideas, write persuasively, present to leadership, manage clients, build trust, coach people, or translate complexity into clarity. Those are skills that travel. They matter in different companies. They matter in different industries. They matter across different business models. They are portable. Portable skills create options, and options matter more than people realize. Because career power is not just about how much you are paid today. It is about how many credible paths you could take tomorrow if you had to. Could you leave and still command respect? Could you switch companies without losing your identity? Could you move into a broader role? Could you survive a layoff without panicking? Could you explain your value to someone who has never heard of your company's internal systems? If the answer is no, then you may not have a skill problem. You may have a portability problem. And portability problems are dangerous because they often stay hidden until the moment you most need flexibility. A lot of people do not realize how narrow their value has become until they are forced to interview. Then they sit in front of another company and struggle to answer a simple question. So, what exactly do you do? And why would that matter here? That question exposes everything. It forces you to separate real market value from internal familiarity. It forces you to explain your work in business terms instead of company-specific language. It forces you to prove that your success was not dependent on one unusual system, one supportive boss, one narrow environment, or one outdated process. If you cannot do that clearly, you are more vulnerable than you think. This is why one of the smartest things you can do for your career is regularly audit your own relevance. Ask yourself, if I had to leave this company in the next 90 days, what would another employer pay me for? What part of my value is truly transferable? Which of my skills would still matter if my current company disappeared tomorrow? Have I become excellent at something the market wants, or just excellent at navigating this one employer's internal maze? Those questions can be uncomfortable, but they reveal whether your expertise is creating freedom or slowly reducing it. Another subtle trap is that companies often reward internal specialization because it solves immediate problems for them. If you are the only person who knows how something works, they may give you praise, stability, and even decent money to keep doing it. But that does not always mean they are helping your long-term career. Sometimes they are simply maximizing the value they can extract from your current shape. And if you are not careful, you can cooperate with that without realizing it. You keep saying yes to the same narrow responsibilities. You keep becoming deeper in one internal niche. You keep postponing broader growth because the current role feels secure. You keep telling yourself you will expand later. Later is where people get trapped. Because every year you spend becoming more dependent on one narrow form of value is a year you are not strengthening the skills that would give you more leverage elsewhere. This is why ambitious professionals need to think beyond immediate usefulness. Yes, be useful. Yes, become excellent. Yes, master your craft. But do not let your entire career become built around a tool, process, or system that could disappear without your consent. Build a broader foundation underneath it. If you are technical, strengthen communication and business understanding. If you are operational, strengthen strategic thinking and cross-functional influence. If you are in a niche role, learn how your work connects to revenue, cost, customers, or leadership decisions. If you are deeply embedded in one system, find ways to work on problems that force you to develop judgment beyond that system. In other words, keep asking yourself not just, how can I become more useful here, but also, how can I become more valuable anywhere? That is a completely different mindset. One mindset makes you a stronger employee. The other makes you a stronger asset. And in the long run, being a strong asset is far more protective because careers are no longer built in a world where one company takes care of you for 30 years. Industries change, tools change, management changes, economic cycles change, technology changes, entire job categories change. If your identity is too tightly attached to one narrow skill inside one environment, those changes can hit you much harder than they need to. But if you have portable skills, broader judgment, and the ability to create value in multiple contexts, you become much harder to trap. You can negotiate differently. You can interview differently. You can leave differently. You can recover differently. You can grow faster because your value is not locked inside one employer's walls. That is the goal. Not to avoid expertise, not to become generic, not to chase random skills without direction. The goal is to build expertise on top of a base of transferable value. So yes, become excellent at something, become known for something, build depth. But make sure that depth connects to skills, outcomes, and capabilities the outside world also respects. Because being indispensable in the wrong way can become a cage. And a lot of people do not realize they are in one until the door opens and they are too afraid to walk out. So let me ask you this. Do you think being highly specialized is a smart career move today, or is it safer to focus more on transferable skills? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to know which side you're on. Number 6. Your value expires faster than you think. One of the most dangerous illusions in any career is believing that past performance protects future value. You landed a big project last year. You saved the team during a crisis. You hit a major target. You launched something successful. You carried the department through a difficult season. You built credibility, proved yourself, and earned respect. And all of that matters. But not for as long as most people think. Because in the workplace, value has a very short memory. Leadership may appreciate what you did last year. Your team may still talk about it. You may personally feel proud of it. But when decisions about raises, promotions, influence, and future opportunity are being made, the question is rarely, what did this person do a long time ago? The real question is usually, what can this person do for us now? And even more importantly, what can this person do for us next? That is the game. Not because past achievements are meaningless, but because organizations are forward-looking by design. Budgets are future-facing. Leadership decisions are future-facing. Headcount decisions are future-facing. Big bets are future-facing. Companies do not promote people simply because they were valuable once. They promote people they believe will be valuable in the season ahead. That distinction matters, because if you build your confidence on old wins without continuing to evolve, you can slowly become outdated while still telling yourself a flattering story about who you used to be. This happens more often than people realize. Someone had a standout year 2 years ago and still thinks that reputation is carrying them. Someone was once the strongest person on the team and has quietly stopped growing. Someone built credibility in one phase of the business, but has not adapted to what the business needs now. Someone is still introducing themselves through old victories while the market has already moved on. That is a hard truth to accept, especially if you have worked incredibly hard to earn those wins. But careers are not museums, they are live markets. And in a market, your value is constantly being repriced. It is being repriced by new technology, by shifting business priorities, by changing leadership expectations, by younger talent rising faster, by economic pressure, by different skills becoming more urgent, by your own ability or inability to stay current. This is why thinking like a free agent is so powerful. A free agent does not assume loyalty will protect them. A free agent does not assume one good season guarantees the next contract. A free agent does not sit back and say, "But look what I did 3 years ago." A free agent stays aware of current value. They understand that reputation helps, but current contribution closes deals. They understand that the market is always asking a brutal question. Why should we keep betting on you now? That is the question every ambitious professional needs to learn how to answer. Not emotionally, not defensively, not with a speech about how much you have sacrificed, but with evidence. Here is what I can solve. Here is how I have grown. Here is what I understand now that I did not understand before. Here is how I am adapting to where the business is going. Here is the kind of value I can create in the next chapter, not just the last one. That is a very different posture from simply leaning on old credibility. And if you want a stronger career, you need to be ruthless about not becoming stale. You need to ask yourself questions that most people avoid. If I join the job market tomorrow, would my recent track record make me attractive? Or am I leaning too heavily on older achievements? Am I still building relevant skills? Or am I mostly repeating what I already know? Does my current work show growth, adaptability, and range? Or does it just show consistency? If my company had to make a tough decision about who to invest in, would I honestly look like one of the safest bets for the future? Those questions matter because they force you to confront a difficult reality. Being good is not enough if you are no longer becoming better. This is why some people become frustrated in the middle of their careers. They are not incompetent. They are not lazy. They are not untalented. They are just running on old proof. And old proof loses power, especially in environments where things move quickly. A company can appreciate that you were incredible during a difficult period and still decide that someone else is more aligned with where they want to go next. A manager can respect your history and still give the next opportunity to someone whose recent momentum feels stronger. A market can admire your experience and still pay more for someone whose skill set feels more current. That can feel unfair if you think careers are mainly about being rewarded for past service, but it makes much more sense once you accept that careers are driven by expected future return. This is also why external networking matters so much more than many people think. If your entire sense of professional value comes only from feedback inside your current company, you are missing important data. You need signals from outside your walls too. You need to know whether other companies would find you compelling. You need to know whether your skills still sound valuable in the broader market. You need to know whether your title is inflated, deflated, or fairly aligned with what you actually do. You need to know whether your compensation is still competitive. You need to know whether your current environment is helping you stay relevant or quietly making you comfortable and stale. That outside perspective protects you from delusion, because companies can be strange little worlds. A person can feel important inside one company and discover they are barely differentiated outside it. Or the opposite can happen. Someone can feel underappreciated internally and discover the market values them far more than they realized. You do not want to find that out only after you are desperate. You want to know while you still have leverage. That is why smart professionals keep one eye on the future even when things are going well. They update their resume before they urgently need it. They stay in touch with people outside the company. They pay attention to shifts in their industry. They keep learning. They keep building proof. They keep expanding the kinds of problems they can solve. They do not let comfort make them professionally sleepy. That does not mean living in paranoia. It means staying awake, because once you understand that your value has a shelf life, you stop taking your current position for granted. You stop saying, "I already proved myself." You start asking, "What am I proving now?" You stop relying only on the identity you built in the past. You start building the identity that will still matter in the future. You stop assuming the market owes you respect because of your history. You start earning leverage through relevance. That is the shift. And once you make it, you become much more dangerous in a good way. You stop acting like an employee waiting to be evaluated. You start acting like a professional who understands how value works. You become more intentional about what you learn, more strategic about what projects you take on, more aware of where your industry is moving, more careful about not becoming obsolete inside your own success story, because that is another hidden career trap. Success can make you lazy in ways failure never would. Failure forces people to adapt. Success can tempt people to repeat, to protect old habits, to defend old methods, to assume old formulas still work, to keep telling themselves that because something once made them valuable, it will keep making them valuable. Sometimes it does, but often, the people who keep winning are not the ones with the best past. They are the ones who keep reinventing their usefulness. That is what you want. You want to become the kind of person whose value does not depend on one old achievement, one old title, one old manager's opinion, or one old season of excellence. You want to become someone who keeps creating fresh evidence, fresh skill, fresh relevance, fresh contribution, fresh proof that you are not just experienced, you are still dangerous, still adaptable, still worth betting on. Because in the end, the market is not asking whether you were impressive once. It is asking whether you are still worth the investment now. And if you can answer that question with confidence, clarity, and proof, you will always have more options than the person who is still trying to live off an old reputation. That is lesson number 6. Your value expires faster than you think, so keep renewing it. If you take nothing else from this video, remember this: careers rarely collapse in one dramatic moment. They drift. They drift when you stay too long because comfort feels safer than movement. They drift when loyalty replaces strategy. They drift when you confuse hard work with visible impact. They drift when you expect other people to manage your future for you. They drift when your skills become too narrow to travel. And they drift when you rely on who you used to be instead of building who you need to become next. That is why career growth is not just about working harder. It is about seeing clearly, seeing where you are underestimating the cost of staying still, seeing where you are giving away leverage, seeing where your effort is not aligned with the problems that actually matter, seeing where your current value is strong and where it may already be starting to decay. The people who build strong careers are not always the smartest people in the room. They are often the people who become honest earlier, honest about what their company will and will not do for them, honest about how promotions really work, honest about whether their current role is growing them or just using them, honest about whether their skills would still matter outside the building, honest about whether they are still building a future or just defending a familiar present. That kind of honesty is uncomfortable, but it is powerful, because once you stop romanticizing your career and start managing it strategically, you make better decisions. You move sooner. You negotiate better. You learn faster. You recover faster. You stop waiting for permission, and you stop giving away years of your life to avoid short-term discomfort. That is the real cost of learning these lessons too late. It is not just money. It is not just title. It is not just missed promotions. It is time. Time spent in rooms that were too small for you. Time spent proving yourself to people who were never going to reward you properly. Time spent building value that did not travel. Time spent hoping instead of positioning. Time spent being loyal to a version of your career that had already stopped serving you. Do not let that happen by accident. Use these lessons now. Audit your situation honestly. Look at your role, your manager, your visibility, your skills, your leverage, and your future options with clear eyes. And if something needs to change, do not wait until frustration turns into regret. Move while you still have energy. Move while your confidence is intact. Move while your market value is rising, not after it has gone stale, because your career is too important to run on autopilot. And if this video gave you something useful, I want you to do one more thing before you go. Comment the lesson that hit you the hardest. Was it loyalty, hard work, visibility, specialized skills, or outgrowing your old value? I genuinely want to know which one landed for you. And if you have learned a career lesson the hard way that more people need to hear, drop it in the comments too. Someone reading your comment might avoid losing years because of it. Thanks for watching.